There it is. So our discussion here, we're talking about psychism versus being psychic. Psychic is you're born with it. It just, the switch is on, the lights are on, but not necessarily any discipline, direction. That all comes later. Psychism is an applied discipline. That's where you seek it out. We all can play basketball. We all can
Mhm.
get out there. And in the same analogy, we all have that potential to various degrees. If I were using a Star Wars analogy, borrowing from that, George Lucas says that everyone has some degree of sensitivity to the Force, right? But then some people are Jedi because they're just amped up, they're born that way, they're more aligned. But if they don't do anything with it, then nothing happens, right?
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
just, nothing happens. So with psychism, you often will seek to develop your ability, and it'll vibrate to a particular sense.
yeah,
So you'll see yourself, or you'll find yourself saying, wow, that just doesn't sound right, or
yeah,
this feels wrong. You'll start telling yourself what sense you're actually developing by
yeah.
the nature of your language. And that's salient to what we're talking about here, which is that language, in terms of the card we're going to discuss today, is important. The word
Yeah,
is important because it creates a vibration that becomes your companion, like a
yeah,
companion animal. So what you speak, it latches onto you. It's a result of the creative element of the first eye, which is the
mhm,
mouth, which originates all other creation. So,
mhm,
um, all right. So the anyway, with psychism, then that develops into an array of sensory things that we then associate. So like you said, you feel things but may not see or hear them. For me, it's often very visual. It's
mhm,
sometimes almost overwhelmingly so. So it's just all sight. And you'll see that when I talk about things like that, I describe it. Like remote viewing is something that works for me because I can see. I
yeah,
can, and when you understand that perception is a lens through which consciousness is experienced. So you can project your consciousness through other lenses and get
mhm,
the sense of what it is to see through something else, or the perspective of paint on the wall that
mhm,
works, looking into a
yeah,
room.
yeah,
The foundational statement that allows everything else to exist as truth is, if a thing is known, then it can be known.
yeah, yeah,
So and then the next step to that is, all things within a system or universe of absolute consciousness are known.
mhm,
So then you pull from scripture, if you lack wisdom, you need only ask and it will be given to you. So there's a doorway. We're going to talk about that today. There's a doorway, a gatekeeper. And for us, symbolically, the gatekeeper in terms of the Wheel of Fortune card is the Sphinx.
mhm,
And we can, and he goes at length, by the way, in this text, discussing the Sphinx in various different modalities, right?
mhm,
But it helps to understand. We can understand the Sphinx by its power set, like, and by what it asks of us.
mhm,
And then that lets us zero in again on, if we're looking at it astrohistorically, if we're trying to tie a link to the ancient gods through
mhm,
physical planetary actual representations, right? So when someone is talking about Zeus, we're not figuratively just talking about a anthropomorphic incarnation throwing lightning bolts around like the Thor movies. We're literally discussing the planet Jupiter, right?
yeah,
Which is
yeah,
also Zeus, and we're discussing it as our ancestors would have perceived it, as another living body within the universe, something
mhm,
that creates, something that causes environmental changes which exceed our capacity. Like, everything's bigger than us.
yeah,
And so the sense of predation on human consciousness is profound. So we
mhm,
seek to work with these gods, with these forces. And in previous classes, we've discussed this and talked about the God machine, the creation of an egregore that then embodies these qualities. And then we draw from the etheric plane and we draw the material plane together and they become this gateway through which we can then talk. All right, let's excellent. Thank you very much. This is what she shared was a copy of probably an earlier version of Wang's text, but if you don't have it, this is the way to go. So thank you very much, Gypsy. I appreciate that. That is awesome. Okay, so the page that I am on in mine, this one right here, is 193. And then the text section that we're working through is 193 through 198. And I'm not going to just we're going to bounce around through ideas. I do that every time. I use this as a source point for pinpointing discussion. Y'all can go through and read this stuff yourself, but there are a few things that I want to point out. Okay, number one, the elephant in the room, if you're a detailed reader like myself, you'll notice that when we work our way through at the very top here, it talks about the path and the wheel of fortune, then it gives you the color, the related sound, the planet, and the meaning, okay, of the character, Caph. One of the things I ask myself every time I read Wang is why he chooses a certain consonant to head his Hebrew. Like Caph, traditionally, I've read it always as K-A-P-H. It's C-A-P-H here, so that'll cause you to kind of, if you're me, and if you're not, if you've never read it before, then you're just like, okay. But the other thing that really kind of stood out is my understanding of Caph has always been a palm, like the palm of the hand. Okay, but he expresses it as a fist, even as a little fist right there, like Caph power. Oh no, that's going to be a meme somewhere. Whoops. Anyway, but he's got it as a fist up in the air, and in his description, when we read on page, let me switch glasses here. Gotta get my trifocals on. Aha. Okay, there we go. So when we read on page 194, he says, as a word, Caph means fist. It is the closed hand which symbolizes grasping comprehension. So he's giving you this sort of I'm reaching out and grabbing it and probably pulling it in, which would tie it to a degree to the idea of the fish hook, right? Fishing, or so each of those are kind of like I'm reaching into something and I'm getting something out of it. I'll tell you why I disagree, but I mean, I don't I'm right here, I just want to point out this is where one of those, this may cause a stumbling block for folks. So he says, as well as the completion of an activity or the closing of a circle, it is closed, and then this is where I think he's hedging, and yet it is in a state of continuous motion. So he's doing one of these things, right? So it's so that gives you the sense of grasping. A cycle always in many stages at the same time, which to me reminds me of those Hindi sculptures where the arms are in multiple positions. But visualistically, what I'm seeing is all of that's happening now. Like all of it is at the same time. So every hand is holding a different aspect of something that's going on currently in the present. So he's saying this. The reason I would object is just on its face, in the simplest of terms, when one identifies the palm of the hand, immediately palmistry comes to mind, which is yet another identifier of one's fortune. So to say the wheel of fortune is identified by the fist, you can't really grasp much with the fist. Having, learned how to fight when I was younger, you grasp with an open hand and you punch with a closed hand, and that's what you do. So I have an issue with Wang here on that ground because it rests in conflict with more traditional understanding, as I've learned over the last few decades. Still, Wang's great. Don't get me wrong. This is like one of the few tiny points where I'm like, why the different consonant on Caph and why the closed fist? He does emphasize that this is all happening at the same time. So at some point, the hand has got to be open. And this would be an illustration of polarity, right? So he points out that the Wheel of Fortune card as it stands resides as a mediator. This is how it provides conciliation. It mediates between two opposing forces at all times. So a lot of times it's characterized by gods who are seen in opposition to each other. One of the examples they point out later is a use of the name Horus and Anubis, the Hero Anubis, which is a dual god, right? It's like a Janus god. This is one of those instances where synchronism in astrohistory happens. Briefly, what synchronism is you'll experience it if you've ever seen an actual eclipse up close and personal. Like I got to experience it, and it's on my website on YouTube. Like I did the whole video of me standing in it. It blew me away. The weather changed. It got cold. Like so much happened during the eclipse. And suddenly the idea of synchronism struck me. Synchronism is when you have two deities come together and they form one from our celestial or our terrestrial perspective. So Re Horicati would be Re, the sun god, and then Horus moving in front of it. So and then you get a new divinity. Anyone who's watched any of the work by Stuart Talbot, he does symbols of ancient sky or something like that. His thesis is essentially that the heavens that we see today, nothing like what they used to look like, and mythology is the guide to understand that. As a component of that, as part of my own work in astrohistory, I understand synchronism is when you take two of these divinities and you mash them together, and now you have a new thing. And the longer they say in orbit synchronistically to us, the longer that deity then remains in effect. A great touchstone for that is the movie Pitch Black, where they're on that little world and she figures out that the sun's going to be stuck behind a series of other worlds and they're going to be in complete shadow. Synchronism. So boom, and a new god is born, a god of the night. If I were an ancient people and I saw that happen, I would describe it as this god ate the other god, and from that demons rose out of the earth and consumed all the land. Like that would be, boom, my scripture right there. That was the end of one world and the beginning of a new world, because there's a whole new rules in place. And when you look at that historically, that's that bridge work. That gate process is all through the tarot, but specifically it's here in the Wheel of Fortune. All right, so one of the things that I guess we'll talk about the Sphinx a little bit more here, because the Sphinx figures a great deal in this card, especially in the text. He spends a couple pages just going over it. The Sphinx is the embodiment of the quintessence. It represents all of the elements kind of combined together, ruled by spirit. So it is that divine consciousness. Oh, you know what? Before we get into this, what we should do is take a moment and discuss what first matter is. I think we've talked about this in the past, but it would help. In our discussion of Keter as the crown, which is the original gate, right? It's the gate where we have the unmanifest on one side and then the manifest on the other. And that gate, that theme of that partition of the unmanifest and the manifest is then seen played out again here within the Wheel of Fortune card. Okay. And the guardian, or the person who stands at that gate, is the Sphinx. By the time you get down to the Sphinx, the question is a question of your personal ascension. When we're all the way up in Keter, it's a question of manifestation. Okay, so first matter, when looking at all things, because everything then is composed afterwards from it, first matter is essentially light. We know that because it is the first thing which is enunciated to be brought into creation. So before that, there's nothing. And then 4 words get spoken by Binah, because Binah rules speech and hearing, which implies that prior to that, of course, there was a bifurcation of consciousness. Keter divides itself, father, son, right, and Chokmah and Binah, mother. But each of them, relative to the remaining levels of creation, they each hold a masculine archetypal potentiality or force. The only true masculine force is Keter, and then everything else is catching the energy and then projecting it. Binah is the catcher and projector into Chesed, right? Follow the lightning strike down. So, but and the way we know that they're all masculine projected up there in terms of their overall universality is the fact that it's a pyramid that goes up, right? It's projecting upward, whereas everything else is a chevron working its way downward. Every point of creation after Da'at, after that gap, is feminine receptive first and then masculine projective. So Chesed catches the ball of vibration, right? And then tosses that ball over to Kavura. Gavura catches it, and the act of catching is receptive, right? And then projecting down into Tiprit, and down it goes. So that first matter then, as light, then differentiates from Binah all the way down into everything after that. A great way to visualize it is that someone is standing holding a garden hose, and then suddenly the water turns on, which is the unmanifest. We don't know where the water came from, but we do know that we have a hose right here and that water is erupting. And so the idea of light, if you were to define it in a singular word, it would be pressure. And then the next word would be outpouring. Like if I were a bug sitting on the ground getting nailed by the water hose, that would be it. My first thought would be, wow, there's a lot of pressure. And then I'd look up if I'm still there and go, look at the outpouring. So that's our mortal experience. The implication of that experience is it chains all the way down the tree and finally resides in the Wheel of Fortune, is an exhibition of what the end result of that journey is. So working through the tree briefly, let's pull up the tree for a moment here. Give you guys a quickie screen share. Okay. So I indicated earlier, we're using the Kabbalion as a means of providing additional definition to the tree, Kabbalistically speaking. And this is something that is suggested by the text, by Wang's text earlier on. He's like, you should probably check this book out. And the reason for it is because as we work our way down the tree, each of these principles then are embodied in the sphere that they occupy. So briefly, the first 2 principles are mentalism and correspondence. And these 2 principles provide the overarching architecture of the rest of the system. Mentalism is the all is mind, the universe is mental. Everything is a structure, a construct of consciousness, all of it. The second one is correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without. It means that the system works together, that you can't have, in spite of our attachment to it, you can't really rely on a system of quantum mechanics to be descriptive of a Kabbalistic reality. A better fit for that is an electric universe narrative, which nestles nicely against known science in terms of consciousness. We know that our body, all living forms, everything that thrives is using an electrical system, including planets and stars. So we pull all that together and it ties us to it. If we use a quantum universe, then we have a bag of hammers in order to generate our energy, and everything is essentially inert. So there's no life there. That's why I preferentially teach EU as opposed, electric universe, as opposed to quantum mechanics. It used to be on the other side. It's too much shoehorning to get that to work. when there's other language that supplies itself better. When we get into the tree, then, as we descend down, we have 5 principles which are functional: vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. Okay, so as you're working your way down, those are then presented. And keep in mind, the tree is happening simultaneously. Even though we see it staged 4, 5, 6, 7, we have to recognize that it is a simultaneous event that we're sort of taking a snapshot of and inferring that one function more than likely precedes the other. And as we work it down, we'll see that. Up here in Chesed, we have the principle of vibration. The divinities associated with this spot often have musical instruments tied to them. Like Vishnu, for instance, has a big conch shell, creates big vibration, stuff like that. So Chesed, vibration. As we work into Gevura, which is Mars, we have polarization. Think the implement of his craft, a big battle axe, right? The design of a battle axe is to break something and divide it in two, to cleave it asunder. So the principle of polarization is there. The principle of rhythm is found in 2 places. Both of them are exhibited as complementary colors here. So that's the sun and the moon. And it's undeniable that the sun controls our circadian rhythms and the moon handles the rest. So including reproductive rhythms. So the human reproductive cycle pairing itself nicely with the lunar cycle. So the next one, which is where we're heading into in our discussion, is cause and effect. Cause and effect then can be seen as the daughter of vibration and rhythm. That's described here in the text on page 195, when he says, this reality illustrates that what is meant by the intelligence of conciliation, which is the name for this card, this path, it is the mediation of activity between rotating opposites. Rotation in this sense means a sequence, something which begins and ends and begins again. This means periodicity, rhythms of activity, as well as cause and effect. So our periodicity, that gives you a division. There's a start, there's a stop. The rhythm is a component of that. Cause and effect is the destination of all that. That is the destination descriptive. So just so you can see my method of just laying the one like a overhead thing on the other, you can see that that actually fits quite nicely. Gender is found in Hod, and we've talked about this at great length in previous classes when discussing Hod. So, and the nature of where that's all drawn, I'm not going to go into it right now. When we look then at the Wheel of Fortune, then what we're seeing is the outcome, the inevitable outcome of a rhythmic cycle that is founded in a particular vibration. And the vibration then is associated with sound. Now, how does this work for us? This is a card that can be descriptive of the outcome of self-talk. Meaning that if I vibrate verbally and I am telling myself, and I'm drawing this personal experience because I deal with it all the time, I'm in pain, I hurt, my back hurts, I don't feel well, and I keep saying that, guess what happens? That actually will amplify your pain. On the other hand, you can actually turn it around. You can, if you can't focus away from physical pain, sometimes that works, you can focus on other things that up your vibration. So I may hurt, which I don't acknowledge, but I might say, my family is safe. My dogs are here with me. I feel warm, you know, and you begin to cement your vibration. The reason I talk about that and emphasize that is because this card and the text points out that the words which we speak become a constant companion to us. They become and this companion can be really negative. This companion can feed on itself. It essentially, for lack of a better descriptive, it becomes your shadow that you are feeding. And the more that you illuminate, the more that your vibration amps up, the less room there is for the shadow to exist. The shadow will always be there because it will provide for you the definition of your character. It's a lot like that Star Trek episode where Kirk gets split in half with the transporter, and one half of him is really altruistic and the other is a crazy guy rapist. But he realizes that, hey, if I don't actually have some of that strength, I can't even make decisions because I'm spending all my time worrying and thinking about feelings and all this other stuff, and nothing gets done. So when Kirk gets bifurcated in that, if you ever watch that episode, the soft-hearted version of him is actually very passive and receptive, and to me characterizes the sacred feminine that is within him, because the aggressive masculine rapist guy, because he goes after the yeoman, and it's pretty horrible, that guy is the antithesis of that. So the hardcore masculine, right? Sacred masculine, the thing that is penetrating, the thing that is aggressive, all those traits. He breaks that apart. Roddenberry breaks that apart for you so that we can take a look. Spock even points a spotlight on and says, take a look at this. This is a fascinating thing to consider, that you can't exist one without the other. But the key is to recognize where you wish to stand within the tree. You as a human, as mortal, we are comprised of light and dark. We serve both. We have to. Our gift to the universe is death. Like, it's the one thing that we're guaranteed to do, and it's the one thing that we seem to be very apt at doing, like killing other life forms. It just seems to be our gift. And it's a component, mythologically speaking, of our heritage through Gavora, through Mars, that warlike tendency that exists within us that causes us to differentiate ourselves, our civilizations, our personalities, or whatever, with the rest of our environment, polarize ourselves against it. That, in one sense, is awesome. It allows us to retain culture and identity and be a person. Taken to the extreme, now it's bad. So, like everything, like that divinity that they describe, the the Hero Anubis meshing, like that divinity, the aspect of its outcome, of its expression, is dependent upon what component of it is actualized. Are we actualizing the hero component, which is a master of the skies and someone who's providing mercy and beneficence? Or are we looking at the one that's going to be taking care of us and is the herald of doom and death, right? Anubis, god of the underworld, the guy who's basically handling all the stuff that no one wants to talk about. Which side of that coin do we fall? All right. So how are we doing for time? Oh, we're doing fantastic. Any questions so far? Hope everyone's been able to hear me okay.
Yes.
You have?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
No, I find it interesting. I was thinking about the hand and the fist that you're talking about. If you don't mind, if it's okay if I talk a little bit about what I
Oh,
was thinking.
absolutely.
Okay, good, because I don't want to
Oh,
interrupt. I was just
no, I just usually lay the groundwork, then we open this up for a
oh,
little bit, see where we're going. So
okay.
absolutely.
If I'm jumping the gun, let me know. I'll wait. No. Okay, okay. Because it had me thinking about well, I wonder with the consonant change, I wonder if it's the dialect of Hebrew that is happening here, because during a lot of time the Kabbalic texts were written, we had the Eastern and Western, Eastern Europe and Western were two dialects, and there are some differences. And I wonder if but that analogy of the open, if you think about it, right? So your hand's going, it's like polarity, positive, negative, but that's what keeps the wheel spinning. If
Right.
one stops, the wheel stops spinning. And like, to me, that speaks of that simultaneous action, because we have to have the wheel spinning, or we have
Yeah.
no universe. Yeah, and that's the thing, and that moving of the energy, basically, that interchange between light and dark, light and dark, light and dark, constantly, and talking about the gate because the triangles with the reflections of the supernals being reflected down through his head, and you know, kind of like that gateway into the supernals. It was interesting to think of it in that context, because I haven't thought of it in that context. Typically when I read, I don't see, honestly, I don't see a lot of, I don't know why. I don't do a lot of readings, but when I read my tarot, certain patterns come up, and I don't see a lot of the Wheel of Fortune. I don't know why, just that's just what happens with me. But yeah, it's interesting to think of, you know, Hased being that gate into the, you know, the supernals, you know. Yeah, because I haven't thought of it in those terms. Because I do have Wang's book, I just don't have it out, but it's in my I should have sat down with it. I didn't think to. It's in my bookcase somewhere. I gotta take it out.
It's
But
a good book.
it is. It truly is. Yeah, yeah.
Especially for this kind of work.
Yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to say that really had me thinking with the hand moving. So I'll stop talking now.
No, thank you very much for sharing. I really appreciate it. Totally. So anyone else? You good? Okay. All right. So now let's take a look really quick and all right, I want to focus on a interesting concept here. When we're looking at, I'll pull the card back, or the thing back up here. So when we're looking at Netzek, it's the seventh sphere, and the number 7 is traditionally associated with luck, right? The color green is associated with the shamrock, which is lucky, and Venus is also seen in one of her many incarnations as Lady Luck. So having the Wheel of Fortune descend into the domain of Lady Luck seems really sensible, until we understand that there is no such thing as luck, and her lesson to us is absolutely every single thing that happens has a cause. You may not have noticed the cause, but there's a cause. Because if there was luck, then it would cause the entire universe to unravel. If you could alter something that was, you know, the fall of a penny or something, and by some strange circumstance you could bend reality enough to just change that, it would create an unraveling, because the universe is built on a series of rules that extend outward into infinity, like an infinite number of dominoes that are just one striking the next, expanding out into this massive tree. I don't know if you ever seen V for Vendetta. There's a whole really cool scene where he clicks the things and all the dominoes go, and just imagine that times a gazillion, like a huge amount of dominoes. And the first one that was clicked was the let there be light, boom, pressure, outpouring, and manifestation. So that's that. He points out here on page 194, he says, the wheel, so important to this path, is a very ancient symbol of life itself. He continues on and says, it is the wheel of karma, but it is emphatically not a wheel of chance or accidents. There are no accidents in the universe, which is one of the key lessons of this card. So at this moment, Calvinists everywhere are like, yes, I told you so. I'm just kidding. Calvinism says that the skein of your life was written upon the point of your birth, so why worry about dying? It's one of my favorite lines in the 13th Warrior, when Antonio Banderas is stressing out and the blonde guy is just like schooling him on, you know, manhood. And he's just like, don't sweat it. If you're going to die, you're going to die. It is what it is, which, you know, yeah, I guess that is, you know, I still have this sense of self-preservation, so you won't see me bungee jumping and testing that or anything, but you know, it does seem to be that if there is something that set things into motion, and that there were a series of rules or principles that governed that motion, of which this card is that principle. It is the governing It isn't the principle, it is the herald of the principle. It identifies that that principle is in motion. It stands at the gate, and it eventually, like the Sphinx, if its question is answered correctly, then it leaps into the ocean. It disappears and is gone. It is consumed by the collective ocean consciousness, because you are the Sphinx. You're asking yourself the question. When you get in front of that Sphinx on this path, and you're seeking communion with your higher self, and you're trying to, as the Kabbalion states, use a higher principle or a higher law to supersede a lower principle or a lower law, then that is what you're doing here at this card. And the question that you're asked is do you know yourself? Who are you? Who are you? And if you aren't able to identify yourself as something other than my employment, or all of the tribal affiliations that we stick to ourselves, if we are stripped of all of those things and can't identify who we are, then we have work to do, because we don't know ourselves. Those things are components to us. They provide the negative space, which gives shading and allows us to step into the forefront of our own lives, but that's not who you are. Neither are necessarily your actions in your past, because it's now, it's not then. They may have gotten you here, but that's not necessarily who you are, unless you're still doing it. So these are the things that the Sphinx asks of you, but specifically just a single question of who are you? And the way we know that is because of the motto Temet Nose, meaning man, know thyself. So that's the one cautionary tool. You need to do that to get through this door. When you do, the means of egress is vibration. So in order to move up, we seek communion with the dominion of vibration. We're going up to chesed. We're bypassing rhythm. We're actually avoiding rhythmic outcome. It's the one key to cinch up. If you think of rhythm as a pendulum, whether you're at the top or the bottom, the motion of the pendulum is the same. It's the same mechanic. So the key then to eliminate this rhythmic flow back and forth is to cinch yourself up on the pendulum, which means increasing your vibration. Literally at the base, that's low vibe. And as you get up to the top, it's high vibe, but it's still the same energy. It's just that it's happening faster at the top than the bottom. Its sequence going back and forth relates differently, right? Because you've cinched it up, and you're no longer experiencing these vast gaps of I'm super high, I'm super low, I'm super high. You avoid that by recognizing how to cinch up through vibration. And the clue is speech. So we actually spell it out for ourselves. We through our words become who we are. That is the thing. Like if you're, and that's why anciently, it was funny, I was watching this one lecture this morning, and he was talking about Middle Eastern culture and how today it's more likely that people who are generationally from the Middle East would be less likely to cheat on a test than their grandparents were. And then he points out that's because 100 years ago, a handshake, 50 years ago, a handshake, you could transfer $1 million based on that, because your word was your bond. It represented who you were, and you would never violate that, because there's a cultural understanding that that is what you are. You're only as good as your word. And if your word is all over the place, then what good are you? That's literally what that culture would say. You're not trustworthy. So you can't be a pillar of society if you're not trustworthy. That immediately, by your own actions, that moves you to the side. It's one of the benefits of this work, that the work demands congruity. It demands that you're honest, that you, because that vibe will be destructive. Like if you're just sitting there and you think you can do one thing and then be lying and backbiting and doing all of these things, which just are a poison and a gunk and a toxin to your soul, trust me, you will never engage with conversation with the holy guardian angel. You'll never, never, ever. It's impossible because you will create a resistance to that by your very nature. You'll never ascend. You need to have that masculine projective pushing out of this domain and pushing up into the next to have that. If you're resistant to that, that means that there's no change possible. And the only way to go up is to let go of something else. So when you're looking at, for instance, when we're looking at this vibration here, here's one of the great keys to understanding path working within the domain of Braya. That's where we're at here, looking at the tree in Braya. So we had all the primary and secondary and tertiary colors. We know that green is created by blue and yellow. So just remember I said you're letting go of rhythm. You're no longer subject to that. Your will is causing you to ascend. Will trumps everything. It's the one thing we do get. We always get a say. It may not be much, but we do have will, right to the bitter end. We can spit in the eye of a hurricane. We do, we can. It's what being human's all about. We get to just deny reality if we want. But in this case, our will allows us to vibrate, our will, our intent, and shed this to go for the primary color of blue in Chesed. So we're no longer that secondary color. And every form of ascension, as you're working your way up the tree, requires, when you're going from Yetzirah here, okay, and you're working into Braya up here, to move up from one to the other means you let go of something. Buddhism's got it. In order to ascend, one must let go. And eventually one must completely let go, which is what's taught here in the middle pillar, right? And we've talked about that in other classes, so we won't do that today. But that idea of letting go, meaning that you set aside what you think you are for the true reality of what you are. And when you recognize that, when you tie yourself to it and you embody that and you pursue that, there are a bunch of awesome things happen. Like you become resilient, you become happier, things like that. But things become available to you. And in this case, I'm speaking in terms of insights become available. Like I'm not talking money or whatever. I'm talking the better treasure, the sudden realization of what things mean, seeing how you fit into that, perhaps even seeing the weight of all your decisions when contemplating this particular path, and recognizing that you may have walked a good path, which then becomes a reaffirmation of your vibration and allows you to create what I call a mental embassy. There are points where you don't have to just keep retreading it when you do your path working. If you've done something sufficiently, it becomes a component of your actual nature. And so you leave an embassy in that spot where you can go there anytime you want because it's home, because that's who you are. It's the difference between, I've mentioned in the past, there are stages to understanding truth. Like when you're a child, you do things because you're told to. Then when you're a young person, you do it because it seems like a good idea. And eventually you do it because it's your character. It's actually who you are. So when you're a little kid, don't steal. And then you get to be an adult. You're like, it's probably a good idea that we don't all steal. And then eventually it wouldn't even occur to you to steal anything. Why would you do that? Because it's not your character. And that's that ascension of vibration where you're choking up and you're no longer subject to things. You're free because there's all kinds of bondage that goes with the lower vibe stuff. That's what's taught in the devil card. The devil card teaches you about materiality, which binds you to everything. You still need it. You need it, but it still binds you. So then the question is, you put it into proper scope, right? And then eventually you free yourself of those bonds. So you're like, yeah, I need this, but eventually you don't. So, all right. Yeah, this has been a really good, I really enjoyed prepping for this. I hope you guys really enjoyed the classes. It's been really good. There's a lot here. There's a lot. We could go on for probably another hour, but I'm not going to. But definitely there's a lot. I noticed this morning that the other video published already. I forgot that I even had that queued to go because I had jury duty. No jury duty yet. I doubt I'm going to get it this week. Probably just jinxed myself, but it's Thanksgiving week. Who's going to start a trial now, right? I just don't. I think I lucked out. So no jury duty. And anyway, so I hope you guys have a really wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you too.
You too.
Same. Yeah,
Yeah.
all of you.
So any other questions?
I have a question about I
Please.
haven't been on because I had to reset my phone, but is anything happening in that Discord channel?
Oh, sometimes I'm terrible with Discord. I'll be the first to admit, but I do read everyone's stuff when they post it, which is really cool. But I think part of it is I'm not really sure what to do with it.
Okay.
So I just the social media stuff, like I have so much time in the day, and I can tell you right now, that's a job. Like just I would like to hire an intern or someone and just be
There you
like,
go.
here you go, dude. My wife tells me I should because it'll eat a day just
Yeah.
trying to get all of the stuff because I post on a dozen different platforms. And fortunately, I found a couple platforms that will simultaneously post on like half a dozen others. So it's like I hit it and boom, it's just like a big thing. But to keep up with it, I apologize. I
Oh
just
no, I just didn't know what the plan was. I think a lot of the channels are voice channels, so I didn't know if you had like a vision for that or.
Okay, my vision would be that the last exit. You notice I have a little channel in there called the last exit, so that could be like a gathering spot, and we could all just have coffee and chit chat there. But the funny thing is we can come here too. So because this is paid for, so it's so it's kind of the one or the other. I tend to come here just because I'm used to it and it's part of the channel.
Yeah.
But if you guys prefer Discord, and that goes for everyone out there listening later, please help me out. Let me know. I'll do more there. I'll make more of a priority for that. But
I was liking.
like
Oh,
Twitter.
sorry.
I suck at Twitter too. It's probably more there.
I was liking the Discord just in the fact that the people that are in it, within the group, can communicate with each other. Like I've been kind of going back and forth with Horace on the AI stuff and trying to learn
yeah.
on that, and so that I created a new little subcategory there that's under AI, and if anybody's interested in that, then they can go read through that and then chime in on it, or whatever. It doesn't have to be like, oh, it's just for us back and forth. It's whoever wants to chime in
I
those
love
little
it. So
subcategories.
that's a
That's
good
what I
spot to put the
thought.
book then, right? Like Wang's text, you could pop it in there. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Maybe point out where that is because.
Oh, the Discord? I will.
Well, no, like the AI chat. I'm
So
not seeing other
here,
options.
let's see here.
Or write it in there and I can look at it. But I can invite
So-
you, Keith.
Okay.
So
thank you.
oh,
Oh,
Yeah.
there you
can
go.
you see,
Gosh.
can you see that? It's wigging out. Okay. So you're over here, right?
Mhm.
And this is your different, like I have a couple of things that I'm in. Oh,
Whoops.
goof. I just hit it. Sorry.
I've got general and then the two voiced ones, the last exit and ask an alchemist, and then a voice channel called general, and that's it.
Here, I will share my screen. How
Can you
about
share your
that?
screen?
I will.
Better.
I just pulled it
Not
out.
having much fun. I
So
gotta
here we
turn this
go.
off.
Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
There it
okay.
is. And
So
then
Yeah,
we've got general
that's all I
chat
have.
here, and then we have the last exit, and then we have Ask an Alchemist, which
Yeah.
I thought it thinks that's a talking one. Never mind. Okay. So and then we have Ask an Alchemist, which I guess is a talking one. I guess I could make it otherwise. I
is
thought you
your-
could throw questions in there or whatever,
So you don't have the AI thing in there.
I know.
No. And I don't know
That's
if
weird.
we're able to make channels that
By the way,
are.
I wasn't really happy with the Y-Files evidence of the electric universe thing. It wasn't as awesome as I would have hoped. But the electric universe guys actually did a rebuttal to kind of clarify some things. So anyway, there's
Interesting.
that.
Can you, is the, cause my, I gotta just
Let's
show you. So
see.
you see how the
There's
AI
Echo Base.
is a
That's good.
subcategory to the general. Do you see that on my screen there? It's coming.
I'm
Oh,
gonna
I
switch
just
this
lost it.
back here. Okay.
So I don't know.
Oh, you know what? I see it if I click, if I go to general, there's a little hashtag symbol with a discussion window next to the search bar. The search.
Oh, there it is. I see
Yeah,
it.
you
Okay, I'll
click
share
it,
again
and
so
there's,
you
yeah,
can see it. I got it.
there's
Okay.
a thread.
Yep. All right.
I
So
feel like I'm
this
too
is
old
like
to
I-
do
talking
this.
about, and this is good for everyone later, including. Thank
Had
you.
to ask my kids,
There,
how do you,
see
how
it?
does this Discord thing work? Oh my. Yeah, there you go.
There it
AI.
is, AI, and then you come
Okay.
down here and you click on
Okay.
that, and there's the discussion.
So
You
it might be a
guys are
little
the
different
best. Look at that.
between
Oh,
the
this is
phone
awesome.
and the computer. Is probably part of the difference too. If you're on your phone or if you're on
Yeah,
your
yeah.
computer.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a whole string there of
Okay.
he's trying to explain to me, how this thing works. I'm like, it's like, whoa, this is crazy stuff. Pretty cool. But
Yep.
anyway,
So
side
thank
topic.
you for sharing. Honestly, you guys are the best. This is
Yeah,
great.
I mean, if somebody comes up with something that they wanted to like share their thoughts on or something, I figure that's a
Yeah.
place where we can all see it and
I don't know what those creatures are. Well, and where you wrote that you played the notes from that Economist cover in the voice channel, you could probably play that and we would hear it too.
yeah, it was
Oh, we should do that. We
It-
should maybe do that later.
it was it was a little disconcerting.
Is that-
Well, like I said, he's calling well, like in this one today is A sharp, and like A sharp. There's no such thing. It's like it's B flat, right? The way that they and
Yeah.
and
Sure do.
no matter how you put them together, if you put it all together and you can sequence it such that wow, that kind of sounds like something musical, but I wasn't too super impressed on but it matched what we were talking about in the discussion, like foreboding, just kind of like it was a bit of a dissonance into it, so it's what I was playing with it.
Well,
It was kind
I'm
of fun.
so glad you did it because I don't have any musical talent that way, and so I definitely appreciate it when you share stuff like that.
Yeah,
Cool.
bet.
All right. Well, thank you, you guys.
Thank
This
you.
concludes it for today. There's a new post on the channel, and I really appreciate everyone.
Yeah.
Great to meet you.
Great to meet you. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Keith.
Thank you,
Thank
Gypsy,
you.
for
Thank you.
sharing
Thanks.
your channel with friends.
Alright.
And
Thanks.
I will happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and
Yeah.
I'll see you guys
You
next
too.
Tuesday. How's that?
Okay.
All
Take
right.
care.
Talk
Bye.
to you later.
Bye.